to share their wisdom with the next generation of great entrepreneurs from UCLA. Tonight is an incredible example of that, when we're bringing back Travis Kalanick, Bruin, UCLA engineering student, founder and CEO of Uber Technologies. And we get the added benefit of having a second Bruin who's created an incredible company, asking the questions about his UCLA experience, his growth with Uber as well. Susan Feldman, who's the co-founder of One Kings Lane, is here and will be joining us on stage as well. UCLA is an incredible place for entrepreneurship. We're the #5 top university for entrepreneurs, and if you look at specifically for women entrepreneurs, we're #6. We can make both of those numbers higher, and with the learning and the sharing of ideas and great companies, we'll get there. Earlier today, Travis spent time with young alumni and student entrepreneurs, sharing his wisdom and his experience and taking their questions about their businesses. And tonight, we're going to learn a lot more as well. But before we get started, we're here tonight as well to present the UCLA Venture Capital Fund's Entrepreneurial Achievement Award to Travis. We all know that Uber is not only an incredible company that's changing the world, growing incredibly quickly, and changing our expectations of how startups work. In fact, many startups, when they're out looking for money, claim to be the Uber of X. Well, tonight we meet the Uber of Uber. I got to talk to some of the people that were here with Travis when he was starting his first company as a college student. And one of the professors was explaining to me how he was a business school graduate professor, and this young kid came to him who was just an undergrad. What was an undergrad even doing in his offices? Well, that undergrad, of course, was Travis, and Travis wanted some advice from his professor, who was an expert. Well, the professor said, here, go off and do some research. I'm not going to talk to you. Off you go. Well, Travis was persistent, read the research, came back, and continued to push for advice and help. And he was so persistent and so adept at what he was doing that this professor ended up providing not only that advice, but his graduate students were working on a project that was helping Travis in his own company. So I think you can see that from an early age and throughout his growth at Uber, Travis Kalanick has represented the ideals that are what we look for when we award an Entrepreneurial Achievement Award. I'd also like to recognize in our audience today Travis's parents who are here with us, Bonnie and Don Kalanick. Thank you for joining us for this event. Don set the standard as a UCLA engineering student and clearly has helped guide Travis to come to UCLA as well. I'm sure Bonnie had some influence there too. So we appreciate everything in the community. But Travis, to us, in entrepreneurial achievement, represents 3 things, and you see that in the story of how he got out. The first is to dream really big. The second is to work creatively to break the boundaries and to look outside the rules that have been governed, whether it's what you should be doing and where you get your resources as an undergrad or anything that he's done later in his career. And the third is persistence, that passion and willingness to do anything to make it happen. So it is my great honor on behalf of the UCLA Venture Capital Fund and all of the Bruins here tonight to welcome Travis to the stage and recognize him with this wonderful award as the Entrepreneurial Achievement Award. Please welcome Travis.
So I don't have a speech prepared right now. I think we're going to go and have a conversation after this. But you know, when I was a student here, I did not think that I would be in Royce Hall, getting an award like this and talking on the stage. I may have been the guy in the back making noise that shouldn't have been, but it's really, you don't know it till you do it, but coming back feels really good. It's kind of it's just a fun and sort of rewarding and fulfilling experience. So I'm really glad to be back And this school, it's exactly the same, though there's not a Taco Bell down there at the bottom of Bruin Walk, which I'm a little upset about. But it seems more beautiful than it did when I was here. So maybe that's because I was mostly in South Campus and never made it here. But it was really great to just get even a little walk around today. So guys, thank you very much. Just a little bit of word. I think somebody was telling me there may be a protest here today for our conversation. You know, I remember back in the day, there was a protest here at UCLA every day. And maybe that's where my roots of activism came from. You know, this is probably not the best forum for it, but certainly at Uber, it's something we do appreciate. It's just everybody having a voice and getting, and you know, whether it's to make change or to protect certain things. And so, you know, I guess my offer to those who maybe were planning on protesting is I'd be more than happy to have conversations one-on-one or as a group afterwards to talk about the things that are concerning or the other issues that you may want to talk about. But if at all possible, if we could have a great conversation for an hour and then do maybe some Q&A, maybe even some heated Q&A after, sort of off stage, that would be great. So thank you very much. Thank you. What's that?
You feel so far away.
That's all right, we can
It's
squeeze it in.
ridiculous. Like, hi, everybody. I'm Susan Feldman, co-founder of One Kings Lane, and I'm an alum of Anderson School of Management, like Travis. Well, like Travis, I don't think I ever imagined myself sitting on stage here at Royce Hall, you know, many years after I graduated, but this is such an honor to be here and super excited to talk to Travis. I mean, there's not many people who've started businesses who the name of the business now is a verb. So, you know, Ubering here and, you know, all that fun stuff. So I'm just as excited as I think all of you to hear about Travis's experience at UCLA and also his journey in the business world, because I think he's got a lot to share. So I also wanted to mention that all the questions that I'll be asking Travis tonight were submitted by the student body or the UCLA community. So I'd like to thank everybody for all the questions that were submitted and everybody's support to get Travis back on campus so that he can share all of his great knowledge. So we'll start off with a fun, easy question to get going, which is, so Travis, what was a typical Friday night like for you here at UCLA?
So I don't know if a lot of folks know this, but I started my first company when I was a freshman. Actually, I started an SAT business. It was actually a tutoring business. And the first person I tutored went up 400 points, and I take full credit for that.
I don't know if my kids were studying for the SAT.
But what happened was then I started tutoring the whole neighborhood, and then eventually started a business with one of the fathers of the students. And so I was running an SAT business.
Right.
In an office, freshman. So my first day, when we first opened, you know, I was wearing a tie, a white shirt. I was 18. The students were 17, and there were 3 of them. And that's how things start. And it was in a nice office building. You get the idea.
Yeah.
So, actually Friday night was the night before the big. I would do 8 hours of teaching on Saturday, and so I was usually. And people don't realize this, but teaching is a performance in many ways. It's not just about the material. It's also about how do you engage and how do you inspire, how do you tell stories, how do you make it funny, how do you also how do you also be firm so that the students don't get too out of control.
Right.
And so I would always be nervous Friday night, and I also knew that I started work at 8 a.m. So I didn't have big Friday nights here, but when I read the Daily Bruin, I usually could figure out something about what happened the weekend before.
Somebody did.
Yes, I always got good stories of what happened Friday night, so I'm sorry if I didn't give you anything salacious.
Well, maybe it was Saturday night better than Friday.
Saturday nights were definitely better than Friday.
Anything you want to share about Saturday?
No, not at all. You could have have just gone with
Okay.
that.
That was an easy way to start off. So I know when I was here at Anderson, I spent, I think, like 99% of my time at Anderson. It just was a very tight-knit community.
I mean, business school's different.
It is a little different.
Business
yeah.
school's different than engineering school.
Yeah. Well, so what you were doing.
I know that I hire them, and I'm amazed at all of the drinking skills that they have.
Thursday night would have been the night to be talking about a business school, but
Every night in
Yeah.
business school.
Not when I was there, but
Okay.
maybe not my crowd. Anyway, but so I did spend a lot of time with the people at business school, but I'm just curious, when you were here, was there a certain place or a professor or a person that you would sort of go to that you were inspired by, or somebody that, you know, thought you could talk to? It sounds like you had a lot of ideas early on, so.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was always an idea guy. But you know, when you're first getting started, you don't always know how to make it into reality. Look, I think it's probably, for me, it was more about a place than a person, right? Like the quad. You know, actually right outside these doors, actually, when you can just look over and see that view, and it might be if you're lucky, it's a warm spring day, or maybe you know, maybe it's at night and you had a long day. Just taking a breath, you know, and I honestly, I didn't even think about that until I came back today. I didn't even remember.
Kind of had that memory.
I was like, wow, I
Yeah.
remember this place, and it was so awesome.
That's a good memory.
Yeah, it was great.
That's good, that's good. No professors that you...
Well, there were some, like I had this electrical engineering professor who had this German accent, who was, I can't remember his name, but he was awesome. And, I had a physics professor, he also had a German accent, he was awesome.
Is that a trend here, I think?
They stood out. My algorithms professor was also amazing. But, you know, that's the best I got for you. I'm a terrible interviewee right now, but we'll just keep going.
We're just getting to the
All right,
good stuff.
fair
We
enough.
just had the UCLA bit. We should get to the
All right, fair enough.
So I found it super interesting reading about your JAMPAT mentoring. I mean, I do a lot of mentoring myself, and I think it's super important, you know, when you have had success. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what that's all about, but what I understand is you getting together with entrepreneurs and kind of brainstorming in, I guess, a pretty relaxed environment. I think it's interesting to hear what you're doing, but also, you know, there's a lot of programs now, like at UCLA, where they're investing in entrepreneurs to, you know, mentor them, but in a little bit more of a structured way, where they're fostering these entrepreneurs and even teaching entrepreneurship. So do you see a world where, you know, your version can mash up with a bit more of the, you know, higher education version?
Well, first, I'll give a little context on this thing called the JAMPAT. Like basically after, my last company I did for 7 or 8 years, and the first 4 years, I didn't make a salary. There were some tough times in there. But even though it was a very modest success, you know, for that company, for me, it felt like a grand slam. But when you go through hard times, and it's difficult, there's two things. One, you need to unwind. But two, you don't know if you're going to be able to do it again. You doubt yourself. You don't know if you have it in you to do the whole thing again. You go, maybe it was a fluke, or maybe I just don't have it, to have the energy. And so, I had this in-between time between my last company and Uber. It was probably 1.5 years. And so, what I started doing was angel investing, because I was still interested in ideas, but I couldn't be fully in the game. And what just emerged was that these entrepreneurs that I'd invest in, or that were pitching me, or what have you, we just started to create a community of our own. And my house was open. It was an open house. And people would come by at any time of the day or night, and they'd have problems. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean problems. When I talk about problems, I'm talking about like the way a math professor might look at math problems. Like without math problems, you're not a math professor. And without hard ones, you're you're not in it. Nothing's interesting. So they would come with all kinds of problems. It could be technology. It could be architecture, like on the technology side. It could be they needed to get their first sale. It could be that they needed to go raise money, and I would engage, or it could be about a little feature, or it could be anything. And we would either engage one-on-one, or we'd talk about big picture ideas. Sometimes people would come literally to my house after bars at like 3 a.m., and then we would just have a jam sesh. And you know, people think of jam sessions, they think of like jazz musicians. This is sort of like that. It's like ad hoc, impromptu, improvisational, but it's about ideas. And so it just became this welcoming environment for entrepreneurs from all stripes, you know, all around to come together and just talk about things and solve problems together.
Do you still do this?
Well, actually, because I'm doing Uber now, what happens is that that's what I love doing most.
Right.
And so what happens is that's my whole day, every day. Is that my management style, the way I like to look at what I do is I'm problem solver in chief.
Yeah.
And so I don't get upset about problems, I get excited.
Right.
So let's go.
That's the engineer in you.
Yeah, and so then all day long, you know, my calendar looks crazy. But I'm excited because I have all these crazy, interesting problems to solve with really smart, energetic partners, thought partners. And so, you know, when you bring it back, I guess the last part of your question was bringing it back for university and what a university can do to help entrepreneurs. And, you know, I think there's some basics to teach, but blogs do most of that at this point. But there's some basics to teach, but I think the most important thing about entrepreneuring is doing. And so if you could figure out a way to have a class where it's just like, hey, you got to start something, and you got to get going. And here's some basics on that, and maybe, you know, every week, you know, the professor's really just sort of like a board member checking in on you. So that could be interesting. The other thing, I wrote this, I don't know if it was in the Daily Bruin or one of the other publications, but I got a bunch of questions that I answered before coming here.
Yeah, I saw that.
And they said, what can we do to promote entrepreneurs? Or how did UCLA help? And I said, well, I had the engineering curriculum. And the only thing that mattered for my grades was my midterm and my final. I didn't have to show up to class. So thank you so much, UCLA. And I'm kidding, sort of.
Maybe some other time to do some things.
Yeah, no, I mean, that flexibility actually matters, so.
Yeah. I'm curious, when you talked about in between your first company and Uber, you had like a year and a half, and I think it's interesting the comment you made about, you know, you sort of, not that you had self-doubt, but you don't ever hear, you know, entrepreneurs who have had multiple companies ever talk about sort of that step between the first and second, or the second and third company, like, you know, was it luck, can I do it again? Like, so was this mentoring, did that help you sort of, you know, start to think about, you know,
well, there's a couple
next
things.
step?
First was that I did, during that time, angel invested in 10 companies. And the funny thing is, it's like so entrepreneurial. I basically invested all of the money that I got, right? So that was kind of funny. But you know, people, I'd go to a cocktail party and people would ask, so, hey, Travis, how's it going? Or what's going on? And all I could do was say how it was going for 10 other people.
Right.
And for me, that didn't feel authentic. For me personally, that just wasn't my thing. And it started to push me towards that a little bit. And that's why when I would get involved, when I invest, it wasn't just like putting chips on a roulette table and letting it ride. I was sort of getting involved.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny when I actually realized that I should be doing it again. It's kind of a funny story. I watched a Woody Allen movie.
Which one?
It was Vicky Cristina Barcelona.
That was fun.
This tells you how old I am, but anyways, so I saw it in the theater, and it was a brilliant film. And this was the thing I was wrestling with at the time, and I walked out of the film, I go, who made that? Well, it was Woody Allen, and I'm like, that guy's old. I'm like, but he still got it. Like, he still has his art. He still has the energy to create. He still has ideas that are brilliant, and he's still sharing it with the world. And so that's when I said, you know what? Let's just try it. And then, I basically said, I'm going to do something. And then Uber became it.
That's great. So when I went to UCLA,
and it was like one of those things where it's like you're 6 years old, and you're in a car, and your mom is driving you home from school, and she tells you this. She's crying. That's going to make me cry. You can't do that, Mom.
I know that feeling. I feel
So if your mom tells you this every day when she's taking you home from school, then that's what you believe. And so even when, look, I like to win, I'm a competitive guy, but when I lose, I don't feel bad as long as I put everything I had to win. And so, and also I don't sort of assume that there's a box and I have to be in it. I just I say what's outside the box. Like, I can just be whatever I want to be. And that really came from my mom.
That's great. Yeah. So I found being an entrepreneur such an interesting journey. For me, starting One Kings Lane was a real passion play. It was something I was looking for. I was looking for great products for my house online back in 2009, and it didn't exist. So I'm like, aha, there's an opportunity here. And with my business partner, Alec Pincus, who you know, in the height of the recession, we decided to bootstrap this business and go at it. And I think from that first day to every single day after that, I have learned some incredible lesson every single day. It's just been remarkable.
And if you're not, you should just push hard.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the way of the entrepreneur. I mean, we know that, but I think folks who are about to become entrepreneurs or don't know, like, should I be one? It's one of those interesting things that you figure out pretty quickly.
Yeah. So I'm curious, because you had a couple of companies before you started Uber. Were there lessons that you learned from those experiences that allowed you to really, when you started Uber, to look at it maybe a little bit differently, or things that, helped make Uber the success that it is today?
Well, look, I think I said a little bit about some of the difficult times that I had in past companies. And I think what that does, especially during lean years, if you start during lean years, especially when you're just, when you go back home because you live at home because you don't have money for rent, that kind of lean. What it forces you to do is it forces you to be incredibly fierce about details because there's nobody else. It's just you. Like at some point in my last company, it was me and one engineer, and then it was just me. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be fierce about details, and then also the thing that came out of it, because we were so lean for so long, is because I was the only one that could do, I was head of sales, CFO, CTO, all that at the same time. It required you to get good at all of the things.
Right.
And so being an engineer, you had to learn how to sell. Because my last company was enterprise software. I had to sell it. And I didn't know what that meant. And I had to go just try and figure it out. And so I became fierce about details and sort of, my style as an entrepreneur is I'm very well-rounded. I sort of had to get good at a lot of different things. And I think that's very helpful with Uber because of the complexity of all the things we have to deal with and the importance of every detail in making sure that it goes well or goes right. It just sort of works out. It works out that was really good training.
And do you find, I think it's interesting being fierce about details, because I agree with you when you're lean and you're really working every single angle.
You can't go and say, I'm going to leave the details to somebody else.
So do you find that you have to kind of hang on to that a little bit more after you start to raise a lot of money?
So, the way I do it is I don't believe that you can make decisions on anything without having all of the details. And so anytime I'm making a decision in the day, it's when I have all of the important details on the thing that I'm deciding on. Now, when you have a team of 5,000 people, that means there's a lot of decisions you're not looking at. And so you have to prioritize what are the problems you want to solve. What are the decisions that are coming to my desk? But then have a culture of mass creative problem solving where in any room at Uber, the person that's making the decision must have all of the details. And if they don't, or they don't have the time to get them, they must delegate that decision to somebody else. And so I don't want to be in a place where I'm not getting the details, because then that's a place where I'm not solving any problems.
Makes a lot of sense. One of the lessons that I did learn very quickly, I think because the internet's kind of amazing this way, you get feedback very quickly, so you can change and iterate, kind of on the spot. Was that if we did try to make something work better and it didn't work, to fail fast. So you hear this a lot. And I think it's actually, I've seen it happen a bunch of times in our company, and it makes a lot of sense. So was there ever a point in your journey, maybe in Uber or your other companies, where you thought, this is not what I thought it's going to be, and how did you deal with it?
Well, I think that's interesting, right? I keep coming back to my last one, which is, okay, so imagine